Hi, I'm Becopin, and this is 36 Years, where we talk about Philippine politics, news, and democracy. On May 9, the Philippines elected Ferdinand Marcos Jr. as president. He's the second Marcos to hold the post, the first being his father, his namesake, the late dictator, who was ousted from power on February 25, 1986, in what we now call the People Power Revolution. That was 36 years ago. Here we try to answer the question, where is Philippine democracy heading 36 years after the revolution? Welcome to 36 Years, available on Rappler's social media pages and on wherever you listen to podcasts. This week, we're jumping back into a discussion on fiction, politics, and how sometimes truth can be stranger than the most fictionalized tale based on politics or news in the Philippines. Welcome to 36 Years, and in this week's episode, I talked to a director whose work I always look forward to, even if at least two of them have made me very, very uncomfortable. We talked to director Eric Mati, the brains and the spirit behind films like On the Job, Honor Thy Father, Seclusion, and the Philippines' bet for the upcoming Oscars, On the Job, The Missing Eight. The Missing Eight was first released via HBO Go and later HBO Max for our friends in the global north as a series alongside the first On the Job movie. In 2021, or rather, back in 2021, the film had already been through a lot. It was shot before the pandemic, finished and edited during the pandemic, had to be reimagined as a series because of the pandemic, because cinemas were closed in the Philippines for the longest time, until it reached its current form as a full length feature film that features a small town journalist as its main protagonist, an anti hero who helps us explore the interplay of quote media, fake news, and politics. That's the synopsis from director Eric Mati himself. Trust that this will be a very interesting interview that Eric and I disagree on some things or even debate over some things slightly. But conversations with him always make for interesting discourse. But before that, this week's headlines. President Marcos appoints Jaime Flor Cruz, a veteran Filipino journalist and among the foremost experts in China, as envoy to the Asian superpower. That Flor Cruz was chosen for the job should not be surprising. He has lived in China for several decades, he has written books about China, and he witnessed and reported on several key moments in China's recent history. With this nomination as ambassador to China, Marcos follows the lead of his predecessor Rodrigo Duterte in naming a veteran China journalist or a journalist who was based and reported on China as the country's envoy to Beijing. Before his nomination, the country's ambassador to China was Chito Santa Romana, former Beijing bureau chief of ABC News. Santa Romana died in office in April this year. But Flor Cruz's appointment may also be surprising if you look at his personal history. That he ended up living in China is because of President Marcos's father, his namesake, the late dictator. When the first Marcos president placed the Philippines under martial rule, Flor Cruz, an anti-Marcos activist, a student then, was blacklisted, forcing him to seek exile in China. Santa Romana too was an anti-Marcos activist in the 1970s. Flor Cruz's intimate knowledge of China will surely come in handy. Marcos has taken a very different approach from his immediate predecessor's China friendly and US averse take on foreign relations. Even as Marcos has emphasized the importance of ties between the Philippines and China, he said that he cannot see the Philippines in the future without having the United States as a partner. Marcos is also seen to follow, quote, any approach that will work, be it bilateral or unilateral, when it comes to the Philippines' territorial dispute with China. On November 7, the Justice and the local government departments filed separate complaints over Bureau of Corrections Chief Gerald Bantag, Bucor's Directorate for Security and Operations Superintendent Ricardo Zulueta, and at least 10 various persons deprived of liberty, the alleged masterminds behind the killing of Percival Mabasa or Percy Lapid, a broadcaster known for his commentary against those in power, including President Marcos himself. Now, the case is taking a lot of twists and turns, enough to rival Direk Eric Mati's OT Jay, and we don't mean that lightheartedly, and I personally find no humor in that. Luckily, my colleague Jairo Boledo has been following the case closely and is sorting through the confusion and hearsay. I highly suggest you watch his recap. We'll be showing a screenshot of it, and I'll be linking to it. I suggest that you watch his recap and read his stories for more details. President Marcos flies to Cambodia on November 9 and then Thailand on November 16 to attend the ASEAN, or the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit, and the APEC, or the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Economic Leaders Week, respectively, back-to-back summits yon. Economic recovery, as expected, will be the main agenda of both summits. They will also be Marcos's first regional summits as head of state. If you recall, his first official trips outside the country were for state visits, and then to the UNGA, or the UNGA, for an official visit. And then there's the matter of that Singapore trip, but that wasn't an official trip as the head of state. He's also expected to hold bilateral meetings as of this recording, 4 in Phnom Penh, possibly 6 in Bangkok, on the sidelines of the summits and the meetings. We will be covering both ASEAN and APEC in person, and by we, I mean me. So we'll likely need to skip a new episodes of 36 Years in the next 2 weeks, but you will still be hearing from me from Rappler's social media pages. Follow Rappler for more updates, and those are the headlines. On to this week's interview. Hello, Direk. Thank you again for squeezing us into your schedule. I understand medyo masikip na naman yung schedule with work and everything. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
We also talked about the missing 8. Actually, hindi ko na matanda na nung taon yun. Blur na kasi yung pandemic, no? Pero if you want to find out about the journey that Direk Eric and everyone in the team took, no, in creating that, shooting it before the pandemic, but also shooting it during the pandemic, and the confusion and the struggles of, producing a work during a lockdown. You can watch the earlier interview, and we'll link to that interview. No? But I want to focus on the part of the journey where the film is now. It's the Philippines' official entry to the upcoming Oscars. Hence, yung limited theatrical run. Will give you details also and how you can watch it perhaps even after the theatrical run. Direk, given the journey it took to create what was originally a movie, and then you had to tweak it into a series, and now it's being presented as a movie the way you intended it originally, what does it mean for you?
Well, I'm just glad the cinemas have closed since the pandemic, and we were left in a vacuum. Us, filmmakers, movie producers, we don't know where cinema is heading at this point. Everyone's waiting for the MMFF to happen this December to see if there is hope to the cinemas. We all don't want it to die. There's an influx of streaming companies coming into the Philippines, which is a good diversion maybe, because it's giving us a platform by which to tell our stories longer, maybe because it's on a series platform, mostly Amazon, HBO, Netflix. Disney's coming in this December, but everyone else really wants a cinema release. And for the longest time, moving into 3 years now, we've never found a way to go back into cinemas. And even with On the Job, I'm just happy that the romance of it going back into the cinemas is good, but I doubt if there's any audience that's gonna come in, knowing that things have changed. No, the viewing habits have changed. The way people view going to the malls have changed. So I'm just glad that we got to show it in its original form as a film. But whether it reaches the kind of audience we really want for OTJ to see, I doubt. I doubt it. Pero happy na rin after Venice, and then when we pivoted into making it into a series because we couldn't show
Yeah.
it as a film. We're just happy that the life of OTJ is still going on, is still continuing. In the
Mm-mm.
same way that the first one also had a longer leg, not just locally but internationally. And almost always it makes you feel good that your film is talked about even a year after it was shown originally.
Mm-mm.
So that alone, parang happy naman, happy kami sa ganon, no?
Mm-mm.
Well, of course, in addition to that, the Emmys and the Oscars attached to it, uh, even made us more excited to do more stuff.
Yeah. I distinctly remember watching the first On the Job film. May certain magic to it, but not in a really happy, magical way. Siguro parang, I hope people don't chastise me for this, but I think it was the first cinematic awakening siguro sa akin na parang, this can happen in the Philippines. And this leads me to my next question kasi for the premiere, the theatrical premiere of On the Job, The Missing Eight, you invited several journalists, and you said in your letter na The Missing Eight explores the interplay of media, fake news, the politics, and the way that we saw it in the 2016 elections in the Philippines and in the United States. Ikaw personally, I'm sure at this point, I'm sure after the first OTJ, it's hard to be faced by anything, realizing na itong yung fiction in the first movie can actually happen in real life or has happened in real life. um but did anything personally surprise you pa in the process of researching for the sequel that this time touches on what is arguably a sector na hindi masyadong fictionalize in the Philippine entertainment world, no, yung journalism. Parang may mga things ba na nagulat ka? And of course, hindi lang journalism naman, pati din dun sa fake news,
Mhm.
disinformation networks in the Philippines. Uh, did anything stand out in the process of researching and preparing for that?
No, I think the main reason, one of the main reasons why we picked journalism as a
Mm.
topic is really how different is our brand of journalism here in the
Mm-hmm.
Philippines compared to the rest of the world. I don't know with other third world countries, no, like
Mm-hmm.
Bangladesh, maybe
Mm-hmm.
even in the Latin American countries. But I remember watching. I saw this film. I don't know if you've seen it, The Independent,
Mm-hmm.
with Brian Cox. It's a small film. the The lead is literally an unknown actor,
Mm-hmm.
and it talks about journalism as well. It's a lead up to the American elections,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, their only issue, me and Michiko Yamamoto, we watched it together, and we were sort of laughing when
Mm-hmm.
the only dilemma that these journalists had was that the source where they got the evidence could mean, because it wasn't given to them, they stole it, could mean the death of their career.
Yeah.
And I was saying, for them, that's already the dilemma, even the
Yeah.
moral dilemma, or what's at stake. Here in the Philippines, it's not about that anymore. Everyone can
Yeah.
just steal the source, but
Yeah.
it's really the fear for your life
Yeah.
that's bugging you, no?
Yeah.
So I think, coming into journalism, that's what we found out. A lot of things are surreal. A lot of things are
Yeah.
strange, and also a lot of it comes out because it's so ordinary. You stumble on it sa research,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so pervasive everywhere that it no longer surprises you.
Yeah.
That for
Yeah.
some strange reason it becomes a black comedy rather than
Yeah.
an exploration of something so
Yeah.
serious.
Yeah.
Diba?
Yeah. I remember this was in 2020, wasn't it, when you invited several of us to watch
Yeah.
an earlier or parang towards the end na cut of the film, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I remember emerging from the private screening rooms and talking to my colleagues in journalism and feeling very uneasy. Um,
Mhm.
I think kasi parang we weren't set up, we, when I say we, journalists in the
Yeah.
Philippines, right? We weren't shaped up to be heroes. And we knew deep in our hearts, dapat ganun lang. Hindi kasi dapat heroes ang portrayal namin even
Using
in
an
fiction.
anti-hero. Hero na
Yeah, yeah.
anti-hero.
And I think also part of the discomfort was we knew parts of the fiction weren't fiction at all because we know them from our own experiences,
Yeah.
from the experience of our colleagues. But at the same time, it was quite difficult. Siguro seeing it on screen and siguro
Yeah.
being forced to confront yourself na, oh nga, ito yung reality natin. And
Mm.
siguro yung discomfort din doon, kasi like you said nga, parang this is something we already know, we're all too familiar with, but maybe it's something
Yeah.
that we're not always comfortable sharing with the general public.
Mhm.
I don't
Yep. Yep.
I don't want to think of it as a dirty secret in journalism. Siguro hindi dirty, pero siguro parang something that's not something you'd openly share with people who don't quite understand the industry siguro. Parang ganun.
Yeah. I remember Pia Ranada um, wasn't buying uh, that Christopher De Leon had to give up his source in favor
Yeah.
of a desperate need to bring down Pedring Eusebio.
Mm-mm.
But also, I also remember you guys saying the first half of the film could actually happen, and the last half of the film is sort of a fantasy. Well,
Yeah.
there's another way to look at it. The way we're looking at it is really it's a wishful thinking in a way. Uh, the last half is a wishful thinking. What if the journalists make everything so personal that they go out of their way to risk their lives to
Yeah.
fight for something?
Mm.
Because I think part of the demise of ABS-CBN, and this may be controversial. This is just an opinion. Part of the demise of ABS-CBN is all these years they've had a chance to really comment on everything
Mm-mm.
that's going on, but they've decided to just skirt around certain issues,
Mm.
and which made them open to, unlike with you guys, Rappler, for example, wherein you're really hitting it where you need to hit it,
Yeah.
the issues. I mean,
Yeah.
so I think uh, what happened to Sisoy, that extreme change and pivot, the 180-degree change in Sisoy at the second half of the film,
Mm-mm.
really is like a cinematic wishful thinking of what journalists should be doing now, because journalism is really really almost dead
Mm-mm.
now. No, everyone's into Twitter, everyone's, and nobody cares if it's the truth or if it's not the truth. What they care about is whether it's in the same mindset as they are in,
Mm-mm.
and that's what they believe in.
Yeah.
And we see that in the US. A
Yeah.
Republican would listen to a right wing conspiracy theory over a left wing conspiracy theory. No?
Yeah. Yeah. I disagree a little in that journalism is dead period, but maybe journalism as we know it is I
Yeah.
don't want to say dead, but siguro it needs to be revisited. And I think parang ano naman yun eh, not to defend journalists in the Philippines kasi obviously may ano ako doon, may stake
Maybe
ako
the
doon.
right word, maybe it's not dead. Maybe the right word is it's lost its relevance. It's lost its in the way things look at,
Yeah.
people look at, the general mass audience would look at journalism.
Oh
No?
yeah. I think
No.
on that siguro kung ganun, I would agree na parang we need to find like it's the values are the same, but we have to figure out where we place in this whack social media world, na
Yeah.
parang ang daling ibaliktad yung
No,
realidad din.
yeah, no, nobody wants to read anything serious anymore. That's what
Yeah.
I'm sick of, and it goes not just with reading, but even with films. No one
Yeah.
wants a serious film
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
And it's not saying that we all want to do just serious pieces, but
Yeah.
there needs to be a balance to that.
Yeah.
But people seem to be, because of TikTok, because of social media, everyone just wants to slide by. Everyone just
Mm-mm.
wants to deal with what they see, uh, like a pass the time.
Yeah.
Yun lang. I don't want to be bothered by it. I just want to browse through it, and I don't
Yeah.
want to think about anything. Just browse through
Yeah.
it, and I'm on to my next meeting.
Yeah. No, to me also it's really fascinating how yung social media, especially yun nga, short form videos like TikTok have changed the
Mhm.
way we consume
Mm.
things. Even ako, I find myself having to check myself na parang teka lang, Bea, kailangan mong, you have to be more patient about consumption. Like of all people, ikaw pa talaga, di ba, yung magiging
Uh,
impatient about the length of the videos you're watching, the length of the films that you're watching, or the series that you're watching. Which leads me to my next question. Ano, parang, uh, the online space, social media is something that's really integral to On the Job, The Missing Eight. You're on social media yourself. You've also been subject to some controversies, quote unquote,
mm.
because sometimes social media controversies are out of proportion,
Yeah.
frankly. But as someone who experienced a full life in effect, no, before social
Mm.
media. Ako siguro half life lang, hindi talagang full. Pero I've seen life without a social media, without the prevalence of social media
Yeah.
now. How have you made sense of the role of social media now in in democracy? You talked about it in with respect to journalism kanina and yung attention spans natin. Parang as someone who puts a magnifying glass siguro sometimes on Philippine democracy, our political system, our socio-economic system. Like, how have you made sense of how social media has affected that, or how social media is shaping it in a way?
Mm. Well, I may say, if this question was asked 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I would have said social media could be a way for positive change and all those things.
Oh, I would have said the same. Don't worry.
Yeah, but nowadays, I think it's really really crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy because they've found a way to manipulate people through the social media, and I'm not talking about parang, dark web shit,
Yeah.
no. I'm just
Mm.
talking about how they could sway things. No, I mean, there's still all the positive things are still there, right?
Mm.
Right now, in the absence of ABS-CBN for news, there's only Rappler. There's only a few networks doing it. GMA also, but almost always when there's something that happens, you look at the social media, you look at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, in order to get a blow by blow account of things.
Mm-mm.
But the danger of it is sometimes if you're not vetting the sites you follow, you end up getting a warped idea of what is actually happening.
Mm-mm.
An example is, and I told him this. I have a friend who, whenever we go out for drinks, we discuss the same issues. But I've noticed that he's always on the other side, and I'm here on the other side. And eventually, I realized he was listening to a different set of people to know about the issue, and me on the other hand is listening to. So one time, I
Yeah.
just told him maybe you should start looking for the legitimate sites to
Mm-mm.
listen to in order to get a clearer picture of what the issue is, because
Yeah.
a lot of times if you listen to the wrong ones, they're skewing it towards how you they would want you
Mm.
to accept the news, quote unquote, no.
Mm-mm.
uh, so nakakatakot siya,
Yeah. Yeah.
that you can convince people, even really really smart people,
Yeah.
they're not smart people who listen to the wrong
Yeah.
uh, I think that's where the ivermectin also started.
Yeah.
Alam mo yan, ang daming mga tukod,
Yeah.
mga ano-ano, di ba?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's something I always remind people din na you think you're too smart for this information, but you really don't know kasi yung social media is programmed specifically to drag you into that bottomless pit of conspiracy theories. Even the smartest people fall for these things and
Yeah.
they don't
Okay,
even know
well,
it until it's too late.
Elon Musk had to delete his tweet
Yung
about
conspiracy
Pelosi.
theory niya. Yeah, correct. Correct. Yeah. Yeah, parang yun din siguro to and thank you for bringing that up na parang yun nga sorry for the Marvel Cinematic Universe reference pero parang siyang multiverse of madness talaga na parang doon nakikita mo na paano ba tayo magkakaintindihan ibang mundo yung tinitirhan ng taong ito sa mundo na
Yes.
tinitirhan ko because of the social media.
We don't think, no?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to how we're gonna solve that, and that's a major. And I think that also ties to. Yeah, go ahead.
And it's gonna go, and it's gonna happen. Moving forward, it's gonna happen endlessly because social media is there to stay, right?
Yeah, and it also ties to the crisis of journalists now, yung distrust sa industry, sa profession as a whole, and
May tanong
and
ako.
not just yes.
I have a theory. I've been analyzing that. Yung parang, bakit, how come there's a loathing of journalists and journalism in general that just like exploded in the last 2-3 years, no? More than Trump. More than, kasi si Trump nagpauso. Is it also because of the change in format made popularized by CNN, wherein it used to be just straight out news, unflinching, no opinions, no editorials, and then when CNN made it popular that you have a scathing commentator doing a scathing analysis of some issues, that people found it like weird that news has become about opinions, di ba? Parang iniisip ko na baka doon din ang galing na nawalan ng tiwala yung mga tao because nga, and I'm not saying left, I'm just saying CNN.
Maybe that's part of it, but I don't know. Yung point of reflection din namin lahat ng like because a lot of my colleagues we do reflect on ang boring ng conversations namin. Ito pala yung inuman conversations namin. Bakit nawawala ng trust sa media? Pero parang
pero maganda nga.
Also, well, sana. Pero part of it is also a reflection of how I think yung isa sa mga general reflections ng mga tao and I collate this through conversations with a lot of colleagues na parang nagpadala din kami yung journalism, not just in the Philippines, but exactly, even in the US, I think, and other countries, nagpadala sa clout, sa social media algorithm, where, di ba, parang the attention economy, na you have to be really bombastic to get this, and that's where, you know, the very fair gripe about sensationalist headlines, clickbait, right?
I think you're right. Going back again, I know we're talking about On the Job, but going back to the film I saw, The Independent, in The Independent, in the opening, as an establishing of the paper they're working in, it's a fictitious paper, the Washington Chronicle, making it look like Washington Post. The main issue was it has to ride on the algorithm. So somebody was suggesting a story from West Virginia, and the editor-in-chief said, who's going to read something about West Virginia? And they're going back into what's on the algorithm now and what's on Twitter, because everything else, no one's gonna read it. No? So I think partly tama yung kwan mo, tama yung pinag-uusapan nyo. No?
Oo, yun. Hindi, again, wala kaming sagot at solution doon sa problem na yun. But yung may isang discussion ako actually with NUJP's Jonathan De Santos in this show also na siguro isa ding kailangan naming gawin. And maybe this also applies to other industries as well that deals with the public, no, is also to learn to listen a little better. Because maybe in our in our excitement and our maybe sometimes arrogance, we also tend to forget to listen to yun nga, yung criticism and yung suggestions and maybe but that's another topic altogether. Although
Yeah.
it does tie naman with with OTJ, no. Um, but which leads me to my next question. Now, obviously, you also think a lot about Philippine democracy and but you know, the Missing Eight and the first
Not
film
anymore.
obviously tack.
Not anymore until the last election.
Nakakapagod na ba? I mean, ano na ba?
Wala na.
There's a need to
I'm just
there's
gonna
a
do
need to
my
check out.
thing. I
Yeah.
haven't watched the news
Really?
since the elections. I haven't watched a single news. And I don't care if anybody talks about the government. I don't care. The only thing I read about was about Percy Lapid because I've been
Yeah.
tagged several times, no?
Yeah.
Pero the rest,
Yeah.
wala akong pakialam. Nakikitanong lang ako, bakit? Ano bang meron? No?
Yeah.
Uh,
Which
but
is
generally, wala.
actually, I wouldn't advocate for totally checking out on the news, but I think that's a good insight also. No, if people are tired of the news, you can absolutely check out in that. Hindi nyo kailangan mag-subscribe sa lahat sa Twitter at Facebook, guys. You can actually do what you're doing. Ask friends na lang
Yeah,
to distill. Kasi I understand the news fatigue that people feel also. And it's also a function of just an overload of sometimes bad news. We can't deny na, our situation right now, inflation is crazy. So I wouldn't advocate fully checking out, but I understand where you're coming from, Direk.
Pero ito rin, because we're doing a lot of research every time we do our movies, especially now with the season 2 of On the Job, we're doing a lot of research too. And almost always, when we see the beginning of the news coming out, there's a different kind of story that comes out in the news compared to how it eventually gets told by an in-depth retelling through journalists who took the story seriously. No? Parang so weird siya that it came out as news. That's why kwan din ako medyo weirded out ako sa Percy Lapid kasi I don't know how much of that is a spin.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of that is real because we're just hearing it from the ones telling the story. Up to this point, wala pang may parang nakapasok doon sa kung saan silang kulungan na nangyari ngayon, di ba? There's no access to anything. We're just getting. So I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, no? Pero parang, di ba? Kasi like for example, yung uncover namin ngayon, we're trying to research on the guy who went into Resorts World na nagbumaril, 'di ba? Ibang-iba na yung kwento ngayon nung nabasa ko, 'di ba? May pinatay pa pala siya earlier, na dalawa, and then tsaka siya pumasok doon, 'di ba?
Yeah.
In the beginning, he was just like a deranged guy who lost some money. Ganun, alam mo 'yun?
Well, this is my opportunity to siguro plug and remind my colleagues and myself even na parang I think that's where the role of the journalist should come in, na hindi kami dapat nagpapadala sa ang dami nangyayari, may revelation dito, may revelation dyan. But it's a challenge in the social media age where it's a world of clicks and just-ins and like Twitter threads that sometimes are earnest and attempt to explain something, but sometimes you need to slow down, which is a challenge, especially for those of us who have become too addicted to social media, siguro.
Well, in relation to that, in relation to that analysis mo is it's the same way I look at critics in the movies. No?
Yeah.
Critics used to do a review of your film beyond the story, but also based on the filmography of the filmmaker, of the kind of style, and you process it based on those things and not just the story or the way he
Mhm.
crafted the film. But
Yeah.
because now you need to come out with the critic the day after you see it, you have no time to let the story
To process. Yeah.
percolate, and process it for a week, no? And you end up talking about the film in shallow terms,
Mm-mm.
diba? In the most go-to. Parang kung kami, when we think of a story concept, ang tawag namin yan first thought. So when you think of a story, what
Mm-mm.
if there's a guy who comes into the house and then he gets killed by, oh, first thought. That's so first thought, first
Mm-mm.
idea. No, we need to dig deeper. No, so
Yeah.
a lot of the critics are all first thought, 'di ba? Yung paglabas mo ng
Mm-mm.
sinihan, kailangan mo na isulat kasi si Click the City naghihintay or si anumang
Mm-mm.
or si Rappler, no? So you
Mm-mm.
end up talking about the film na hindi parang hindi buo ba, parang hindi luto.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's why I also find interesting yung mga, nagiging uso siya ngayon, yung reviewing a piece of work, be it an album or a film, years or minsan a decade after, or decades after it's released.
Hmm.
Siguro, interesting to, like, kasi syempre, because you're detached from that era, i-research mo rin yung context of the film, the cultural
Yeah,
nuances then,
yeah.
and then
The
you
time
also
it was
tie it to the,
made.
yeah, so, well, I think that's also, in essence, it's a case for slowing down, which is easier said than done in today's world. Direct, pero ano, I know that you said that you've tuned out a lot in when it comes to consuming the news nowadays. But a lot of your films, specifically, obviously, OTJ, By Bust comes to mind, Honor Thy Father, and I have to single this out because truthfully, this is the last horror film na willingly ko pinanood sa Clusion. After that,
Hmm.
di na ako, ayoko na manood ng horror ulit. Um, Parang conscious decision ba yun sa iyo na gusto mong mag-tackle ng Philippine politics, Philippine social realities, or parang natural lang yun para sa isang Eric Mati?
No, actually, I'm not really a political filmmaker, and you can see it in the
Mm.
films I make. I try as much as I don't really voice out my one-sided thoughts on things. My films tend to balance the issues with as much characters that
Mm.
belong to the other side and to the other side as well. I don't see myself as a political filmmaker. I really am fascinated by these stories. And
Mm.
it just so happened that most of the stories that are fascinating are either political or
Yeah.
social political, no?
Yeah.
And I tend to be a little bit, or not a little bit, but I tend to be very sarcastic. So my my films tend to get that feeling, no, that tone of sarcasm, more so in Honor Thy Father, di ba?
Mm. Mm.
Parang doon lumalabas yung galit, yung inis ko, no? Um, I think also the reason why I pick all these insights from what's happening around us is because there's already enough materials that are made up coming out of our cinema. Yung
Mm.
parang puro made up. And
Mm.
I'm not doing documentaries, but
Yeah.
I'd rather ground my stories to something that's really picked out from in culture, no? And
Mm.
more so what's happening now, the more relevant it is, the better. No? And
Yeah.
I don't know how
Yeah.
long we'll be doing that. The next few projects we're doing, in as much as they're a bit more stylized and
Yeah.
fantastical even,
Yeah.
but it's also grounded by some sort of a political issue.
Mm.
Ang nangyayari nga lang, depende lang sa movie eventually, kuminsan nasa buried siya underneath the characters, or
Mm.
sometimes malakas siya, no? Like in
Yeah.
Vibas or in OTJ.
Yeah. Yeah. Naalala ko pala, the first time we were in an interview specifically for On the Job, The Missing Eight, was in
Mhm.
2021. Because I asked you about this, na, about the whole truth is stranger than fiction, kasi 2021, we were coming off the Formally scandal and trivia.
Mm.
Derek eventually went with journalism, but one of the topics that you considered, right, for the
Yeah.
OTJ sequel was yung corruption, tama ba? Corruption in
Oo.
medical,
Yes,
tama
malfeasance,
ba?
medical malfeasance, yeah.
Yun,
Oo.
yun. So
Even
sabi ko sa
before
kanya,
formally happened, no?
yeah, exactly. So sabi ko sa
Yeah.
kanya, either way, parang had you gone with journal, kasi obviously during, if I don't know where if you were living under a rock, but 2020, 2021 were especially rough years for Philippine journalism. You know, you had the ABS-CBN shutdown,
Mm.
what happened to Rappler and our boss Maria Ressa, and even until now, later on, yung attempt to shut down Bulatlat and
Yeah.
other entities, no? Pero I was telling Direk na parang, how strange is it that reality is sometimes more extreme than the plots of OTJ, and it's the same thing now, no? Na parang we mentioned earlier, the killing of Percy Lapid, obviously a tragedy, but also the twists and turns of this investigation now, the
Yeah.
noise in effect of the parang kumbaga piecemeal revelations
Yeah.
with in connection to the investigation, complete part din doon yung pagtanggal ng government officials. Recently kakalabas lang, the Philippines continues to be among the most dangerous in the world for journalism, and
Mhm.
the very reality of the show, 36 years after the EDSA revolution, the People Power Revolution, the president, our sitting president, is the son of a dictator whose
Yeah.
time in power was one of the darkest days of Philippine democracy. Yung sabi mo kasi sa letter to journalists, inviting them to watch the premiere, no, of The Missing Eight, na the movie tries to understand why we are in this vicious cycle of corruption and impunity. After working on The Missing Eight, the journey that you went through, again, from film to series, now being presented finally sa initial way that you wanted to present it to the world as a film. How do you make sense of where we are now? And why are we, parang ang dali ng tanong, no? Why are we in this vicious cycle of corruption and impunity? I'm interested to see from your perspective, di ba?
Yeah.
From someone who's fictionalized this.
Yeah. I think I had a conversation with one of uh, VP Lenny's staff, and I mentioned the reason why you're not gonna get any traction. This was during the campaign, is because you're not playing the game of politics in the campaign. Meaning, I said, you're trying to make everyone believe that everyone is willing to do the right thing, and that's what you stand for. And by doing the right thing, you should side with us. You should be with us. But you must realize that the country is not about that. The country has survived everyone, down to the smallest of people working in the smallest of jobs. They've survived with compromises, with moral compromises, with small nuggets of corruption every day.
Mm.
And dapat si VP Lenny, kung pumasok siya, should make them understand na, okay, status quo, even if she's gonna change when she wins, if she's gonna change everything when she wins, but she needs to make people feel a lot better that, okay, because what you're up against are not the big people doing all the corruption. Of course, that's the bigger story. Pero the smaller ones who's trying to navigate life every day, di ba? Who gets pressured by the security guard na, oy, wala ka na naman kwan. Kuya, ito, ensaymada, okay na yan. Di ba? Yung mga ganyan, yan yung hindi mo mapapaniwala eh. Kasi pag tinanggal mo sa kanila lahat yon, mas worse pa yung buhay nila. 'Di ba? So I think yung constant na corruption culture sa Pilipinas, it will not uh, disappear. It
Yeah.
will not be solved. 'Di ba? it can be solved siguro slowly for after 20, 50 years, di ba? Pero dahan-dahan. It cannot be done overnight. Na parang, okay, bukas wala ng corruption, di ba? Kasi nga lahat, customs, paano mo mawawala yan sa customs? Ever since it was put up, corruption na talaga yung setup nun, di ba? Paano mo mawawala yan? Just because
Yeah.
sinabi mo, hindi mawawala yan, di ba?
Yeah.
Yan.
Yeah.
I
It's
don't know
both
if it,
cynical
I
and
may,
no, it's cynical, but to me it does make sense. Na parang, I don't know. I think also part of my reflections from the 2022 election was
kasi,
that it's a very yeah. Go ahead.
no, kasi pag iniisip mo, Bea, yung systems kasi natin are not efficient eh. And
Yeah.
those small corruptions make it efficient somehow.
Yeah.
You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Sobrang traffic, di ba? Yung ordinaryo na tao na pangatlong beses na late sa opisina, in-stop ng MMDA. Ba't hindi ka magbabayad para umabot ka ng on time?
Yeah.
Di ba? Just
Yeah.
because you want to be
Yeah.
you want to be right? You want to be righteous? Hindi. Di ba? Magbabayad ka na lang kasi nakasalala yung trabaho mo. Di ba? Third time na yan, fourth time. Di ba?
Yeah.
Because traffic na nga, hindi pa efficient yung, alam mo yun, LTO. Ba't hindi ka na lang mag-shortcut? Di ba?
Yeah.
Kasi nga, you'll have to stay one whole day in LTO if you want to do it the right way. Alam mo yun?
Yeah.
So unless
I think the the bigger
unless all
reflection
the
is that in
systems
the
are fixed,
Philippines,
walang
in
mangyayari.
the Philippines,
Diba?
it costs money and time to be what's the term for that? To be just and right. I get what you're trying to say. Yes. Oo nga naman. And siguro it also go.
And what's weird is when you stay on the right side of things, nagmumukha ka patuloy na epal. Di ba? Because everyone else, unlike you, di ba, everyone else needs to do the wrong thing in order to get their lives better, di ba? Para
to survive.
So ikaw ngayon nagmumukha, sige, ikaw na, mayabang ka, okay, di ba, try mo. Kasi kami, lang kami, mamalengke kasi kami araw-araw, ikaw hindi naman, nag-online order ka lang, di ba?
Yeah, that's a tough thing to process, but also I think something that we have to reflect on then. Yung again, back ulit sa your experience is not everyone else's experience, and you have to consider that when you think about the reality of the Philippines. You mentioned earlier, so Direk, what's the future? What's next for OTJ? You have a limited release for The Missing Eight in Philippine cinemas, but so what's next? What can we look forward to?
So after Venice, we went to a lot of festivals. We went to Busan, we went to Germany, we went to China, and then from there, we of course, together with that, we were released in HBO Go, which is for Asia, and we had good numbers in the release. So eventually, the HBO decided to release it in HBO Max, which is Canada, the US, and Europe. So it's now showing there. Now, after this theatrical release, I'm leaving for the US for the campaign for the Oscars. I don't know if we're gonna make it. We've been sending films there. I don't want to be hopeful, but also we're gonna work hard for it. No? So we're going to the US. We'll do some screenings and some campaign sorties. And then we're going to New York on November 17 for the Emmys Awards night, which is on November 21.
Yeah.
Now from there, I don't know if the life of on the job in the festival circuit wala na, tapos na, or there's no more awards coming after. After that, we will be shooting on the job by May next year, the second season. This one has
can you tell us kahit ano lang, konting preview lang of what the next season has in store?
So I'm supposed to do. There's two on the jobs I'm supposed to be doing. So that second season, which is gonna happen this July, and
Mm-hmm.
then we're also. I was planning on shooting the prequel of On the Job, which
Mm-hmm.
is a movie. What is the
Okay.
prequel? The prequel is how this prisoner gun for hire system started in 1994. So it's a period
Mm-hmm.
piece. Attached to it is Jericho and Ryan Agoncillo. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully they could wait a little longer because of the Oscars and the Emmys. We had to move our shoot to next year. So together with
Okay.
that, we're doing the series. The series now is 6 episodes. It's still a 6 episode series. We're bringing back some of the characters in the series. So um, Joel Torres is coming back. Dennis Trillo is coming back. Joey Marquez is coming back. Uh, Lot De Leon is coming back. Dante Rivero, um, Leo Martinez, Empress Shook, which is in the first movie. And
Uh-uh.
then we're bringing in a surprise big star to join the cast. Uh, she's already signed up for On the Job season 2 with a really, really great role for her. She's a girl, and that's it. So the story now is revolving around one of the issues I told you in the three topics that we wanted to explore earlier. So there's journalism, there's
Mm.
medical malfeasance, and there's this other one. So I don't know. I don't know if you, but I hinted already because I was talking about Resorts World earlier. So
Yeah.
maybe you get what it's about.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. I love how this is great. This is turning into a really confusing, admittedly, universe. Na all the characters are crossing over from one from siguro hindi siguro bukod lang sa siguro yung prologue ay hindi natin alam baka yung sa prologue may mga papasok din ng mga characters in the more recent na version. The more recent na set. The one set in current day Philippines. So it's interesting to see how I'm sure hindi ka maubusan direct ng ng material given how crazy Philippine politics
Yun nga,
and
when we were discussing si Michiko and I, because we both created it, sabi ko, ay, siguro last season natin the third one. And that's it. Sabi niya, alam mo, sa dami ng issues ng Pilipinas, hindi matatapos yung OTJ.
yeah, no, if anything talaga I swear reality like the real news items even
uh,
outdo the plots of fiction and OTJ. It's insane.
uh,
So if people have until the 9th of
yeah,
November to catch it in theaters. Limited release lang, limited run lang
yep,
yung The Missing Eight in cinemas, but they can still watch it on HBO, correct? As a
yes.
series this time. Okay.
Mm.
So, panoodin. Actually, most of the people I know in my circle have watched it. Partially also because siguro I've been tweeting. I was tweeting and promoting it na.
Uh,
Hindi ko pala inaako, sorry. Pero a lot of the people I know have already seen OTJ. Including my journalism friends and like me, I think, and like us during the screening, it's a very uncomfortable and interesting watch, I think, to see
yeah.
our realities fictionalized on screen. Thank you, Derek, for your time. I know today is a very busy day. Actually,
Thank
you're
you.
in a shooting right now, right? Siningit mo lang
No,
to.
no, no. I'll be shooting
Ah,
tomorrow.
okay. Okay.
So
So it's a
naka-sandwich
very
ka,
busy.
kahapon din may shoot.
Today pala yung libre na day. Okay,
Uh,
gets. Thank you again for your time, Direk. Thank you
thank
for
you.
watching.
Thank you,
We'll be
Bea.
linking my past interview with Direk Eric and also maybe a direct link to OTJ presented as a series as available on HBO Go. Not HBO Max, wala akong ganun. HBO Go for our
Yeah.
Philippine listeners and viewers. Thank you again, Direk, for your time and thank you for
Thank you.
watching. Bye,
Thank you,
guys.
everyone.
That has been this week's episode of 36 Years. Thank you again to Direk Eric for joining us this week. If you want to watch On the Job, both the first and the second movie as translated into a series, it is still available to stream via HBO Go if you're in Asia and HBO Max in the global north. Again, some housekeeping. I'll be tuning out of 36 years in the coming 2 weeks because I will be in Phnom Penh in Bangkok to cover the president, but you have not gotten rid of me yet. Catch our recaps and discussions on the ASEAN and the APEC and why they do or they don't matter on Rappler's social media channels. You can also catch other Rappler shows and podcasts on the same social media pages and on wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening, and you'll hear a new interview from me real soon, probably in 2 weeks. Bye.